to another episode. We are here in the beautiful castle gardens of Marval, and we thought that we'd mark our 6 months of living in Portugal permanently with a slightly different episode this week. We thought we'd do the 10 differences that we'd noticed between the UK and Portugal.
And hopefully it'll be 10 differences in 10 minutes or thereabouts.
This isn't really good versus bad, it's just things that we've noticed in our own opinions.
And bearing in mind we've moved from rural Wales to rural Portugal, there will be a rural slant to the things that we are able to compare.
It would also really help our channel if you could hit that subscribe button so that you can keep watching our videos every week.
The first thing to talk about is houses and land. And we've really noticed what a difference there is between the price of houses and land in the UK compared with here in Portugal.
Yeah, we could never have been able to afford to get our own small holding in the UK, not without giving up our jobs and being able to work the land at the same time. We would have still had to keep our jobs, so coming to Portugal has allowed us to do that.
The style of houses over here in Portugal are different too. What we find is that room sizes are usually very small and life is lived in a very simple way, because you will find that the kitchen, living room and dining room are all the same room, with one large open fireplace, which is where the cooking took place and where people used to sit to keep warm too. There might be one other room for a bedroom, and pretty much that's about it.
And then the other thing that I've noticed, or we both noticed, is obviously the houses, they're all painted white to deflect the sun and keep it cool in the summer. But quite often they've got an accent of colour around the doors and windows, and that could be any one of 4 colours that we've seen so far. It could be red or yellow or blue, or what was the other one? Red, yellow, blue?
Green.
Green.
Also, especially in Alentejo, the area is synonymous with very large ornate chimneys. They're everywhere. They're absolutely stunning and beautiful. Definitely they're not found in other parts of Portugal, but then houses are built of different materials in those regions because of what's available to hand. For example, there are schist villages further north from here and around Castelo Branco. Very much it's granite buildings that predominate.
So the second one is roads, and we've really noticed that the roads are so quiet here.
Bearing in mind that's because Portugal is 37% the landmass of the UK, but the UK has 68 million people living in it, and Portugal just had 8 million. So that's why, especially away from the urban centres like Lisbon and Porto, you will just have the roads to yourselves. Also, with roads, what I've noticed driving around is the lack of potholes. We all know that the UK is absolutely covered in potholes at the moment. It's a real bugbear for a lot of people, but over here they don't happen, and if they do, the road teams are out instantly to deal with them.
And I've always also noticed on the roads is some very, very old cars. Oh my word. You'll see an old Renault or an old Datsun or a Peugeot, and they all kind of come from late 80s, I suppose.
Yeah, it's amazing how many we see, and it's just down to a couple of things. One's the climate, because it's so much warmer, and the second is they don't have to grit the roads here, and that really does stop cars from rotting.
But they also hold their price.
They do hold their price. Second-hand car prices in Portugal, you're looking 20 to 30% higher here than in the UK.
So the third one for me is culture. And everything seems to revolve around food and drink here in Portugal. Alcohol is ridiculously cheap. And food, quite a lot of the time, the Portuguese have 2 3-course meals a day. So they have a soup to start off with, and then they'll have a meat or fish course, and then they'll have their pudding afterwards. And while we're on the subject of that, they take lunch breaks. I can't remember the last time I had a lunch break. When I was working. They take lunch breaks, and they're normally an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes even 2 hours to have a lunch break. And there's also the cafe culture. every town, every village has got a little cafe, and they're always busy, and all the locals go into them. They go in first thing in the morning and they maybe have their breakfast or have a cup of coffee, and it's all tiny little espressos. So but it's lovely to see the community meeting, and when we go in, we're included in the little cafe culture as well. So the next one's landscape, and I think first thing that really struck me was how wide open the spaces are here, and the land's wide open, whereas the UK just has a patchwork quilt. You really noticed it when we flew over, didn't we?
Yeah, and another thing I've been really struck by is the abundance of wildflowers, or flowers generally, not just during the summer months, but throughout the year. Even in December, especially as that's when the rains have fallen compared to the dry summer, there are wildflowers everywhere. And with the fact that many of the trees in Portugal, such as olive, cork oak and home oak, are evergreen, you could easily fool into thinking that a December day here is May back in the UK. One thing that many people may not know about Portugal is the fact that we get snow. Up here in Marvão, that's been known to have snow on the ground at certain times of the year. And also up in the Serra da Estrela mountain range, that has snow pretty much throughout winter if conditions are right. We've seen it in the far distance. We'll show you a picture of it. And it not only gets snow, but they have got a ski resort up there as well, which is amazing.
So the next one's cost of living. And we're not going to go into too much detail about this because I think we're going to make a specific video on it, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, okay. So cost of living here. I think cafes. I'm going to go for cafes and coffee. Coffee here, you'll pay €1 for a coffee in a cafe. Can you imagine that? We can buy 2 coffees. We like galaus, which are lattes. 2 coffees, 2 round doorstep sized toast, and that will cost under €5.
Whereas back in the UK, at a well-known chain of coffee shops, that would cost a lot more. Probably about £16. The other thing that we've noticed in our 6 months here is the cost of food. So your grocery shopping. It is definitely more expensive here than back home in the UK. An example would be, especially for out-of-season products, like a melon. During the summer, it's possible to buy a bag of melons for about €5. But out of season, in winter, you can pay for a large melon about €10.
Well, back in the UK, they're only about £2 year round, aren't they?
Yeah. So
that's €180.
Bearing in mind it's working at about €2 a kilo and the melons are massive, it's still substantially more than what it would have been back in the UK when we were living there. The seasons. Back in the UK, there are 4 seasons, all with 4 different types of rain, but rain it is still. But over here in Portugal, there is quite a stark difference. So winter, we've found that starts kind of mid to late December and is pretty much done by the middle of February. Then we have spring, which lasts through till about April. And from then on, the temperatures really start to rise and you get sun with no rain from April through till around about September. In September, there's another season, what I call a 5th season in Portugal, and that's because as soon as those rains hit, the grass suddenly turns green and all the wildflowers come out and start to bloom again. So it's like spring all round again. True autumn, if it does exist in Portugal, we think it's kind of late October through till mid-December. But with temperatures still touching 20 Celsius all the way through into deep December, it still just feels like a long lingering summer compared with the weather back in the UK.
You don't see the leaves fall off the trees?
No, you don't. And it really does mean that when the sun comes out year round, it's absolutely glorious and it feels like summertime all the time.
So the next one's got to be the people. They are so warm and friendly and approachable. They're inclusive. They're always helping us out if our Portuguese is a bit pants. and they either speak a bit more slowly or they correct us, or in Paul's case, they speak English.
I have the amazing ability to speak Portuguese in a way that nobody can understand.
But no, people are really friendly. So when we first moved here, the community, the Portuguese way is to know what's going on. So when we first moved here, we had to go to our local parish council, the junta, to get a piece of paper to say that we'd moved here. We didn't have to show them any proof at all. They knew exactly who we were as soon as we said where we'd moved into, which was so lovely.
Yeah. The other thing about people out here is how incredibly healthy they are. We regularly see people who are well into their 80s, even 90s, such as our neighbour Manuel. They are still busying themselves around, very active, very fit. We put that down probably to the diet here, which is very much based around fresh vegetables and fresh meat and fish. But the other thing which surprises me is that so many people smoke out here as well. You'd think you wouldn't see so many healthy people as a result, but you do. It is quite astonishing.
And everyone says good morning, good day. So it's bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, just to say hello, how are you? And it's something that's just definitely gone from the UK culture. People that don't talk to each other and strangers in the UK.
Not in quite the same way. And I think that people are more able to make time for each other over here. Miranda mentioned earlier the cafe culture, where people do seem to gather and chat for a while. And I think it literally is, life over here is more simple and it's not as rushed, so people do have more time for each other.
Yeah. So the next one is farming culture.
So what we've noticed throughout Portugal is that everybody still seems to have a hand in agriculture. And by that we mean that people often have small parcels of land, little fields or little allotments near the home, in their home or nearby, where they grow their own fruit and vegetables and maybe keep a few animals like some sheep or lambs, some chickens and things like that.
Talking about lambs, the lambing season is completely different here as well. So that's to tie in with when the grass is most abundant. So lambing here is kind of it's December to February. You'll see lambs out, whereas in the UK, lambing is kind of like March, April time. So what you'll see here is collecting silage is done for the animals to feed them in the summer, whereas in the UK, collecting hay and silage is for collecting to feed the animals in the winter.
Our last but one topic is rain.
Oh my gosh.
And believe you me, we've become experts in Portuguese rain over the last few weeks because it has rained non-stop. And that's no surprise. When I looked at the statistics, our local area gets half the rain that our home did back in the Brecon Beacons, and that was quite a substantial amount. I guess the difference is that the rain here falls over a short time span, seeing as it's dry throughout the summer months. So when it does rain, it generally is very, very heavy rain.
Yeah, you're counting the days of rain at the moment, aren't you? Because back in Wales, it could rain every day. I mean, when we were back there, it would rain every day for months and months. Whereas here, I think the average is it rains for 60 days in Portugal, but it does kind of all come at the same time.
It does, and it's kind of indicated by the large infrastructure that's in place, for example, next to the roadsides to take flood water and rainwater away. The culverts and gullies are substantially bigger here than back in the UK. So the 10th difference between the UK and Portugal is custard, and the amount that custard predominates in cakes and sweet things here.
I mean, it's not just the national pastry, pastel de nata, right? It's in everything. It's in your donuts, it's in your cream pastries, it's in big cakes. I cannot escape custard and I can't stand the stuff.
Yeah, Miranda absolutely hates custard, and she's been very disappointed on a few occasions where she's bought a cake thinking that she was finally safe from custard, only to find out that she wasn't, which means that I end up with 2 cakes, which is absolutely fantastic.
So that's our 10 differences that we've noticed so far here in Portugal. Hope you've enjoyed that, something a little bit different. But next week we'll be back to our normal vlogging around the farm.
And hopefully by then we'll have some sunshine out too. So keep your fingers crossed for us, because it is still forecast to rain for another 7 days yet.
Yeah. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.